I've had several supernatural experiences throughout my life. They started when I was a kid and have followed me into adulthood. I've always wanted to share one of the scariest and most unforgettable things that ever happened to me. This is real, and I'm not exaggerating or trying to scare anyone by sharing it. So, my earliest memory of something strange was around 6 or 7. I had a lot of insomnia as a kid, largely because my father was abusive and I felt like I had to protect my mum. I was the eldest and I often stayed up while my younger siblings slept. One night, I was laying in bed wide awake when I felt something grab my hand. My arm had been hanging over the edge of the mattress and I felt something physically grab me in the dark. After that, I started sleeping with my mattress against the wall and my back to it. People warned me about bugs all the time, but honestly, I preferred that over ghosts. Later, my sister told me that she once saw a shadow figure, a tall man-like entity, standing over me while I slept. She had gone to the bathroom at night and peeked into my room on her way back. She ran to her room terrified. Years later, my mum told us that she also regularly saw a dark presence in that house. She never told us when we were kids because she didn't want to scare us. I've always had sleep paralysis though, and as a kid I would scream internally while completely paralyzed. I could see the room, see people nearby, but no one could ever hear me. One time I was on the couch, stuck in sleep paralysis, looking at my mum across the room, trying to scream for her. She didn't hear me, and I told her about it, and being southern, she just sort of said a witch was riding your back, and to just pray. I eventually learned not to sleep on my back. It seemed to have triggered it. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened my freshman year of college. I had moved into a dorm room with a roommate. Her grandfather passed away just 3 days after we moved in. I had met him. He was in our room helping her unpack. And not long after that, she told me that she saw something non-human on my side of the room. She didn't give a lot of detail, but said that the energy felt dark. After that, she was rarely around and eventually moved out before the semester ended. Now one night, I was alone in my dorm struggling to sleep like usual. I decided to, pleasure myself for lack of a better phrase. It usually helped me to fall asleep quicker. Midway through, I suddenly felt the warm, heavy weight of a person on top of me. I could feel hands on me, caressing me, groping me, and I was frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. It felt like sleep paralysis, but it was different, and so much worse. I could feel this thing gripping my thighs, touching my chest, and I couldn't do anything. Eventually, I mustered up enough strength to grab what felt like a shoulder or broad and muscular thing, and then it just vanished. In an instant, the weight was gone. I jumped out of bed and searched the room, but nothing. No one. I checked the door and it was locked. The windows were shut. I lived on the 6th floor. No one was in there but me. After that, I couldn't sleep in the dark anymore. I avoided that dorm like the plague and stayed at home as much as I could. When I told my doctor about it, he didn't even question the story. He told me that this was spiritual and that no medicine could help me. He looked concerned though, and he didn't prescribe anything. Some people have said that this was an incubus. Others say that it was trauma, sleep paralysis, or even my roommate's energy attracting something. All I know is that it was real. It was physical and I felt it. And no amount of logic can just explain it away for me. So, has anyone here ever experienced anything like this? Or does anyone know what this could have been? I still don't have any answers, and if you can help me out with that, I would be grateful. I'm from the Netherlands and I'm 21. I live near a village just outside of a big city. This village, it's located on a large wooded area. There's a place where me and my friends often come to smoke or drink in the evening, and we call it the nature spot. It's a wooded dune-like area with a large island in the middle, and to get to this island, you have to cross a small wooden bridge. The nearest houses are quite far away, I would say about 1 kilometer. I don't know what that is in miles, but the place at night is pretty dark out there. In the winter it's bare as well, wet and muddy, and nobody really comes out there. Now, this happened about 3 weeks ago. That Friday night, all my friends couldn't hang out, and I don't have many friends, but I wanted to go to the island to smoke and drink by myself. I didn't mind hanging out alone on occasions like this. In fact, sometimes I enjoyed it, when no one is around me and it's just me and nature and my smoking. I know the place well, and I carry a knife with me just in case when I go hanging out alone in the woods at night. I'm not a scared person, but I'm also not an idiot. I often walk through these woods at night with headphones on and my music at the loudest point that I can get it to. I do this to create some tension because, well, my life is pretty boring in the past few months, and every time that I go there, especially at night with some smoke or drink, I always get an excited sort of gut feeling, just to be there all alone in the dark on the island. So I walk through the wooded area towards the island. It's now around 12:30 at night, and I have nothing to do tomorrow, so I hang around the place for a bit. Before I cross the bridge, I take off my headphones to listen to see if I can hear any sounds coming from the island, just in case there are people or homeless people on the island, and I come walking in there with my music in my ear. After a few minutes, hoping that I was alone, I planned to sort of smoke a joint at a tree in the middle of the island that we call the Witch's Tree. This is because in the winter, it looks like the Blair Witch movie setting. So I walk onto the island towards the Witch's Tree with my music on. I walk towards the tree, and at the same time coming up to the tree, I see a naked man, around his 30s or 40s probably, literally standing on a log that's pretty high from the ground, right in front of me, looking down on me. Yes, he stood still in a literal T-pose in the dark, all naked when I spotted him, which frightened me pretty quickly. In just a flash of a second, my heart dropped, and I jumped back immediately, and my headphones fell from my head into my hands. I first scream out to the man, "What are you doing?" And out of panic and fear, I jog backwards while keeping my eyes on the dark pathway. At this point, my whole body is filled with fear and adrenaline. I didn't know what to do or to say, so I just yelled while jogging back, because he looked like he was ready to chase me, to be honest. I have used this tactic before as well, especially in forested areas encountering homeless people or suspicious people at night. Nowhere near this location though, where I yell out at them like this if I have to create a kind of psychological reaction where I sort of invite the perpetrator to come my way instead of showing fear or freezing, I guess. Only when I'm carrying a knife, and of course I'm not going to stab unless I absolutely have to. But I was still super scared. Now I'm at the bridge, and at first I think that this is a drugged out homeless person who has just messed up. I do believe in the paranormal, but I've never experienced anything, or anything like this ever, so I said to myself that it must just be a homeless person. I doubted myself a lot though at that moment, because I thought that I was going to die or get stabbed for a brief moment, because even though homeless people do go climbing up in trees in the middle of the night, they don't do this naked. And also, saying nothing when spotted, just staying quiet like that, was weird. Now I'm standing on the other side of the bridge, shaking and waiting. I wanted to make sure that he wasn't following me before I ran. I wanted to call my friend to tell him that there was this naked guy at the tree. He would answer the phone and come out with me. But at this moment, out in the dark from the other side of the bridge, the naked guy, I spot him, and he is walking towards me, literally just out of nowhere. My heart instantly dropped again, And yes, he was naked, but to be quite honest, that wasn't even the scariest part. The scariest part was his face and his eyes, literally in the moonlight, what looked like a zombie, and he had his arms straight up when he walked out of the bush, like he was caught by the police or something. He walked arms straight up over the bridge towards me, which was really creepy to see, and also because the bridge is super wobbly, it has almost no supports in terms of firmness, nothing to it really. It's almost impossible to get over it without holding onto both railings. But he literally just walked straight ahead, without any drop or stop, like he was almost walking over water or something. I run back while shouting, "What are you doing?" And then he starts screaming like a drug addict and starts running towards me. I quickly run away through the dark forest back to the park where the houses are close by. This is like a 5-minute walk of dark pathways, and while sprinting down, I could hear him sprinting after me and literally saying that he was going to eat me if he caught up to me. Just the thought of a strange naked man running after me in the dark like this, and also what happened before, made me run faster than I ever thought that I could. I totally forgot my knife, like I didn't want to stay there for a second longer. I didn't even think about confronting the guy is what I'm getting at. I even stumbled and fell face first into thorny bushes and was lost for a few seconds, while hearing his screaming coming toward me getting louder and louder. But thankfully, even though I was terrified, I was quick because I guess I had so much adrenaline running through my blood, and everything just unfolded so fast. I ripped my jacket and lost my second bike keys, but I made it home, and after that, I didn't sleep that night. Now, homeless people in the Netherlands do not behave like this one did. In fact, I have never seen or even heard of a story about homeless people moving like that or anything. These are really the stories you hear from like America, where homeless people are on all sorts of drugs or something and turned into literal zombies. But those are the vibes that I got from this incident. That next morning, very early, me and my friend, we went back to the island after I told him what had happened. And literally, when we got there, I remember standing on the bridge and throwing stones towards the bush to see if the man was there, and the bridge was so bumpy that we could barely get to the other side. And all that while the man from that night just literally walked at a walking pace, with his hands in the air like it was easy, straight over that bridge. Also, after looking around for some time, we concluded that there was no clothing, no mattresses, nothing that showed someone had slept there on the island or even stayed there. Since then, I have never gone back again, so I cannot truly confirm that there's no one there, but still, that day we didn't see anything, and we really looked around for quite some time. Well, literally a few days ago, I saw what looked like the same man. I'm pretty sure it was him, hiding behind a tree from a woman who was walking her dog in the park when I cycled past. He seemed possessed, like he was talking to the tree while he was hiding from people, and he only had a blanket to cover himself. After seeing this, I thought back to that night and decided to tell the story and share that here. Turns out, he's apparently a guy who escaped from a mental institution not far from where I live. Police are still looking for him, and yes, apparently he is dangerous. I think I was in the 6th grade, not even sure how old that is anymore. My parents were split, and I was staying at my dad's house in Indiana that night. He had one of those tri-level homes, backed up to a wooded area. Bedrooms were all on the top floor, mine was across from his, and the spare room was at the end of the hall. My dad and baby sister had knocked out early. I was watching TV. It was probably close to midnight, or a little after that. I was lying on my side, half zoned out watching whatever was on, when I heard this loud thump on the roof. I paused for a second, but honestly I was just a kid and kind of brushed it off. and maybe a few seconds later, I swear that I heard footsteps, like something or someone was walking up there. But I knew that that wasn't possible. Still, I wasn't really scared yet, just confused and on alert, I guess. Then, out of nowhere, boom, the entire power shuts off. TV, lights, everything, just silence. That was when the fear hit me like a wall. I couldn't move. I got that full body chill, frozen kind of fear. I didn't even sit up, just laid there stiff, eyes open. Then I heard a noise coming from the spare room, like something was moving around in there. At that point, I fully thought that we were getting robbed. But what happened next made me question everything that I thought that I knew. You see, I saw something. It ran out of the spare room and down the hall, and then down the stairs. But it wasn't a person. It was tall, at least 6'5", glowing grey, and shaped exactly like a human, but not quite right. The way that it moved, the way that it looked, it was like nothing that I'd ever seen. I tried to scream for my dad, but couldn't. Not a sound. I was suddenly completely paralyzed. Couldn't move, couldn't yell, just sort of completely stuck. I laid there listening. I remember the sound that it made going down the stairs, like bare feet or clawed feet almost hitting hardwood, and it was fast. I stayed frozen for what felt like 10 minutes. Nothing happened. No noise, just silence. And suddenly, the power flicked back on. I remember the alarm clock flashing like it had reset, and I turned the TV back on and glued my eyes to it, trying to calm myself down a bit and make sense of what I had just seen. I didn't sleep at all that night, and I never brought it up to my dad. He was a tough guy, street dude, and I knew that he was just going to laugh at me. I've only ever told one person about that night, my wife. But I certainly have not forgotten it. And even sharing this right now, I still get chills. This story didn't actually happen to me, but to my neighbor. He told it to me a couple of nights ago, and it is the creepiest story that I've ever heard. I thought that I would share it here and see if I could get your thoughts. For context, my neighbor lives downstairs in our apartment building. Our families frequently have dinners and get-togethers over at their place too. I don't want to share any names, so I'll just call him Jeff. Now, a couple of nights ago, we were at Jeff's place for lunch when he told us this story, and by the looks of it, it seems true because he genuinely looked creeped out and genuine while telling the story. This takes place in early 2004. Jeff was in his late 20s at the time, with his daughter just being a newborn. At that time, he didn't have a stable, well-paying job and was struggling a bit. His wife didn't work because she had to take care of their daughter. He worked at the local fruit and veggie market, and often he would do additional odd jobs so he could make ends meet. He was in a mentally bad place around this time, but one night after work, Jeff was especially sad because he couldn't even afford diapers for the baby. He wanted to clear his head, and so he went to a pub to drink a beer before going home. He sat at a table and ordered a beer. There was a person sitting next to Jeff. The stranger saw him and saw how depressed and sad Jeff looked. The stranger asked Jeff what was wrong. Why does he look so down? Jeff explains everything, how poor his family is and how he doesn't have a stable job, that they cannot even afford diapers. The stranger laughed and told him, "Don't worry, my friend. You look like a good person. I'm sure things will turn out good for you and your family. I'll give you this phone number and I want you to call that number. I hope you find a good job." The stranger writes the phone number down on a piece of paper, finishes his glass of whiskey, says goodbye to Jeff and pays for his beer. Jeff doesn't think much of it, but he keeps the phone number just in case. After a couple of days, Jeff, still sad and in poverty, decides to call this number. The line picks up and a lady's voice says, "Hello, Jeff. I was expecting your call. Everything will be fine. You will soon find a good job. I want you to come and meet me so that we can chat in person." Jeff is obviously and understandably creeped out because this strange woman knows his name instantly. The woman tells him the address and says that she'll be waiting for him soon. Jeff, still in disbelief, hangs up. He told me that he felt very uneasy and anxious about this call. The strangest thing is that the address, it wasn't even in our city. It's in Schumann, which is about a 50-kilometer drive from where we live. He goes home that night and he shares everything with his wife, and his wife reassures him to go. Still hesitant, Jeff decides to go anyway. I mean, he has nothing to lose, right? The following Saturday, Jeff drives to Schumann to meet this lady. He stopped and asked for directions for the address that she gave, and he finds the address. It was a small but regular Bulgarian home, white facade with red roof, one that you would find in most villages across the country. He goes to the door and knocks. A lady opens the door. She looked like she was in her late 50s or maybe early 60s, and she had a rag around her head, like a regular babushka. She immediately says, "Hi Jeff, I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you came." She invites Jeff to come inside and take a seat. Jeff looks around the house, and the house is just one huge room with walls painted white. It had absolutely no furniture, except for a desk, 2 chairs, and 2 windows. Jeff is obviously very confused how she knew that it was him and why the house is essentially empty. He asks her, "Who are you? How did you know it was me, and how do you even know my name? And why do you want to help me?" The strange lady offers him a cup of coffee and says, "Don't worry about me. I know so much about you, Jeff. I know about your daughter, and I know that you're struggling. But this won't be any longer. Starting today, you will find a new, very well-paid job, and you'll be able to provide for your family, and you'll even have a second child. I know a good and honest person when I see one." They talk for another 5 minutes, and Jeff says that he has to go. Mind you, she didn't give him any job, no number to call for a job or anything like that. She just told him that he will soon be well off. Jeff, very confused as to what was going on, even offers her money because he thought that she was some kind of a fortune teller, common in rural Bulgaria. Every big village or town had a fortune teller at the time. I remember going to see a fortune teller or wise women as a kid in the late 2000s, in fact. But she denied the money and even got a little bit offended by it. Jeff went home and felt very confused and insecure about the whole thing. In the end, though, he thought all of this, besides the strange and the creepy, was really just a waste of time. Well, a few weeks, maybe a month or 2 pass, and he's still in the same sort of poverty, no progress. But one day, he bumps into an old classmate from high school on the street. They start talking for a while, and Jeff's classmate tells him that he works on cruises, and they're searching for personnel. He recommends him, and soon after, Jeff starts working on cruises, an extremely well-paid job. And, well, the rest is history. He still works in the same field, over 20 years later. And now, the creepiest part of the story. So after 1 year on the cruises, he decides to stop by the strange lady and thank her, buy her some gifts, a good champagne or something. Jeff was convinced that she was responsible for his new job, or if anything, at least brought him luck. So he drives to Schumann. And although he still remembers the address perfectly, he just, for some reason, could not find the house. He stops to ask for directions again, but the locals tell him that this address apparently doesn't exist. There is no such street, and there has never been one. He is shocked by this and sort of in disbelief. He couldn't process what was going on. So he looked and looked for this place, but he just never found it. 20 years later, and he still thinks about that woman and the unexplainable nature of everything that happened. Now, I know some of you probably won't believe this story, but I know my friend and I genuinely think that it's real. The way that he explained it and his body language told me that he was telling the truth. And considering that I have a paranormal story myself, it makes me believe his even more. But what are your thoughts on this story? Did a similar thing ever happen to any of you? Could there be a plausible explanation for everything? Do you think that he's making it up or telling the truth? I haven't been able to stop thinking about this story for a couple of days now, and I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. This happened years ago, but pops into my head a lot, and I'm hoping that maybe throwing it out there into the ether will help me get over it. So, March to April of 2019, I just moved to Washington in October and made a friend who was stationed at GBLM, also not native to the state. He and I had been working on making the back of his pickup something that we could camp in, and thought on a whim around midnight that it would be fun to maybe go to the national park for a night. We make the drive out there. I note that it's kind of weird that the road is lined with residential homes, and at some point the road turns to dirt, and I guess we're in the park. This was a month or two after Snowmageddon, and the parks were out of season, so the road was out pretty rough, but we made it through. Not being from here, I had an eerie feeling off the bat from I think they're Douglas trees, but they were bald except for the very tops from the heavy snow. I don't know what it was, but they just felt unnatural and foreboding to me, I guess. Even all these years later, in fact. Initially, we pull off onto a little hill facing some tall grass that had a board for arrow practice, and we hang out there for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but probably just creeped out from the trees, honestly. I tell him that I don't want to stay in that spot, because there's only a narrow path to drive in and out of, and I didn't love the idea of getting blocked in there. He says alright. We pull out and head further down the road a few minutes further, and find a proper parking area at the camping trailhead. We were using a portable battery that we'd gotten for the first time, and it made this wild sound when we turned it on, so he was outside away from the truck messing with it, and I'm trying to relax in the back, but I just couldn't shake this weird feeling. There wasn't a way to go directly from the bed to the cabin, and this being the first time that we weren't just on the side of the road, I was a little bit anxious, I guess. So I stand outside for a minute, just sort of looking around and listening. Honestly, I think I was more trying to hear for bears, since those were a new thing for me to have to worry about, but instead I heard tires. I told my buddy to stop and listen, and then I see lights in the distance, and we both throw the back shut and hop in to leave. As we're driving out, the lights are at the top of the hill, and I tell him to slow down off to the side, thinking that it was probably some sort of park official out there to just make sure that we were not causing any trouble and tell us to skedaddle or whatever. He rolls the window down, and as they pass, I look, and the truck is not marked. There are two men in the front. They're definitely not park officials either, and they make direct eye contact with us and do not slow down. The second, too, that I see their faces, I told my friend to absolutely gun it. The truck continued towards the parking lot, and I felt a bit of relief about that, until I noticed that they have turned around suddenly and are now catching up to us. We're probably about 45 to 50 down some pretty rugged road, and they are directly behind us within a couple of minutes, I would say. Once we make it back to the residential street, which might have only been 1 or 2 turns from where we were, but thank God my friend was able to remember the way back, we hit 60 to 70. They have not backed up at all though, and now their brights are on. I remember while looking out of the window at the mirror, noticing a house's porch light flick on. I spin around to watch out the back, and someone was beginning to step out. Finally, I glance over at the time. It must have been around 3 a.m. The people at the house were probably unrelated, but it was still a bit weird, but realizing the time exaggerated just how insane this was that the people were chasing us like this. Anyways, we get to the stop sign and obviously do not even slightly slow down as we pull onto the main road. At that point, the truck then overtakes us and passes us. It must have been going at least 100, and suddenly turns right down a side road. I am now pissed. I tell my buddy that there's just no way in hell. Let's go and get him. I turn down the same road maybe 15 or 20 seconds later, and I swear to you that they were just gone. There was also a dead end and a neighborhood street to the left that they couldn't have been in, a gas station a minute or two up the road that they weren't at, and then just the interstate. And how they made it all the way out there in such a short amount of time is genuinely beyond me. The only explanation, save for going down the first side street, parking in a driveway and shutting off their car immediately, could have been behind the gas station, but in either scenario, why were they now the ones hiding all of a sudden? After the fact, I looked up the park because, what the heck even was that? And I find out that we did not go to Olympic National Park, and we were instead in Capitol State Forest, where the only weird thing that I could really find was a body being found in a burned-out truck back in 2012. There's only one single article about that too, so I have absolutely no idea if they ever figured out that one, but everything else was just various accounts about people being shot or being found shot, but with there being gun activity allowed in the park, I don't find that particularly surprising at all. More than likely, it was probably some people living on that street that noticed us going out there in the middle of the night and figured that we were up to something and would freak us out or something. At least, I hope so. I cannot really imagine what would have happened if they had gotten to the parking lot while we were unprepared, or worse, if we were still in the original spot on that hill. Something tells me that they were up to something and that we were in danger. I want to share something strange that happened to me a while back now. I'm 20, male, not superstitious at all, but what happened made me really question things. So my stepdad's side of the family is from a province that I won't name for obvious reasons. People there are different. The place definitely has a reputation, and locals there say that there are folk witches, both good and bad, living there. Everyone in the area is careful about how they act, what they say, and who they look at. Even my stepdad warned me, always be respectful, and never let your guard down. Anyway, we went there for a short visit, and one afternoon I bought a sealed bag of chips and was just walking and snacking when I felt someone behind me blow air directly at the back of my neck. It wasn't just wind, too. It was like someone exhaled on me. I turned around, but no one was there. Just a few old houses and quiet streets. I brushed it off. A few hours later, I started feeling really weird though. Dizzy, heavy, I lost my appetite completely, and my sense of taste disappeared too. I couldn't enjoy food, couldn't sleep well, and I just felt drained. My chest felt tight, but no fever. We went to a hospital the next day, blood tests, vitals, everything just came back to normal. The doctors told me that I was fine, maybe just a little bit stressed or tired perhaps. But I knew that something was wrong. I just felt off, and I wasn't the only one who thought so too. My stepdad, finding this out, immediately took me to someone that he knew, an old man who lived in a hidden house far from the center of town. No signs, no lights, just a path that locals apparently already knew. This guy was quiet though, calm, eerily calm. Didn't ask questions, just told me to sit. He placed his hands on my head, muttered something in a language that I didn't recognize at all, and then blew gently over the top of my hair. He handed me a small shot of some kind of bland-tasting oil and told me to drink it. I don't even know what was in it, but I just followed along. Nothing happened instantly, but about a day later, I started feeling normal again. My appetite came back, taste returned, the fog in my head lifted. Whatever that old man did, spell, prayer, placebo, I don't know, but it definitely worked. I'm not saying that I believe in Kulam or spirits, but I cannot explain what happened there either. I just know that something invisible messed with me, and science, it didn't catch it. Be careful out there though, especially if you're visiting places with deep-rooted traditions like I did. Some things just cannot be explained, and sometimes the old ways, they still have power, whether you believe it or not, like me. I'm a pretty skeptical person. I always find some way to rationalize something scary or unsettling. But no matter how hard I try, I just cannot understand what happened to me and my friends back in 2021 at a cemetery close to their house. It was late at night. Me and my two friends, Marina and Jake, thought that a nice activity for the evening would be to place some roses on headstones that looked like they haven't been visited in a long time in a cemetery nearby. I've done this before, but only ever during the daytime. This time it was almost midnight, but I thought with flashlights that it wouldn't really be a problem. We started at the front of the cemetery and planned to make our way down, reading the names and the dates of each grave, noting how abandoned they looked, and putting a rose on ones that we deemed fit. Well, about 5 minutes in, I heard a quick whistle from the back of the cemetery. I was taken aback a bit, but I just thought, it's probably just my imagination or something, especially since I have a fear of the dark, and therefore was already on edge. But a few seconds later, there was another whistle. I turned to my friends and asked, "Did you guys hear that?" Both Marina and Jake denied hearing anything, so I just tried to ignore it. But a couple more whistles later, and Marina went, "Oh yeah, I heard that." So I wasn't crazy. The whistles then began to hop from side to side of the cemetery, and eventually Jake noticed too and said, "Yeah, I hear it," and tried to mimic the whistle. Again, too, I'm a skeptical person, but I do know one thing: never whistle back. I hit Jake lightly and whispered, "Man, why the heck would you do that? Whistle back." And the whistles promptly got louder, and suddenly closer, coming from all different sides of the cemetery. Flight or fight kicked in, and I started booking it, and my friends followed my lead. We ran to my car and we got the heck out of there quickly. Now, a couple of possibly random things followed, or it could be related somehow at least. You see, as we were driving away and passing the gate, my back windshield wiper got ripped off all of a sudden. I drove the two of them home, and they're related, so they lived together on a family-owned ranch. And within the week after, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I didn't sleep because of the paranoia and the anxiety, and when I did sleep, I started to have these reoccurring nightmares about getting bitten and attacked by rabid animals, anything from rats to wolves. Those still have never stopped to this day, but it's weird, right? Anyway, Jack and Marina, they had it worse. That following week, various animals on their ranch turned up injured or dead. Just chickens or goats, but a really strange amount of them. Then Jack's cat suddenly went missing. She has never been found, dead or alive, and Jack still is mourning the loss of his best friend. And as much as I just want to justify or brush it off as all coincidence, I cannot help but wonder if this all had to do with what happened at that cemetery that night. Has anyone had any similar experiences before and know what it is or what happened? I have theories on what it could be, but I'm still not sure. So please, if you know anything, then do let me know. I wanted to share my experience with something that I encountered a couple of years ago. I'm very much a skeptic and live for facts and evidence, as my career suggests. I'm still searching for answers for my experience, and I dream about it repeatedly, and I'm still none the wiser about what I saw and felt. So late 2023, I attended an RTC, a road traffic collision, on a night shift. I won't go into too many details in order to preserve my own identity and the patient's, but it was near fatal. A heavy goods vehicle, a truck for our non-UK friends, collided with 9 people at high speed, pinning many of them into a building, then backing up and releasing them to the floor. I attended the scene, arriving first to what was really a bloodbath, limbs missing and people with horrific injuries. A 10-second triage states to, do that. I did and found myself a patient, which I believe to have been the most life-threatening injuries, some of which included cat bleeds from one arm and one leg, bilateral femur breaks, one closed, one opened, a collapsed lung to the right side along with a serious crash injury to the torso, bradycardia and quickly dipping into CA, open fracture to the left ankle and naturally in and out of consciousness. I would be here a while if I had to list every single injury, but I hope that gives you a bit of a picture. This young man suffered horrific injuries, so I began my treatment on him. While doing so, I kept finding myself looking up and over to the right of me, and I could see a black figure standing there, almost transparent but foggy and black. Naturally, I sort of looked away and continued my treatment to the best of my ability and scope, but it kept drawing me back to look at it. Obviously, being a skeptic, I referenced past it by looking at colleagues standing within about 5 meters of the figure, and I could see them clearly. Looking back at the figure standing there, I just couldn't make sense of it though. I tried to ignore its presence since this man's life was in my hands. I must have looked at it about 5 to 6 times, still standing there not moving. But then my mind became clouded and my judgment was off. Then I noticed new injuries popping up, his condition deteriorating rapidly. And it was then that I honestly felt like this presence was fighting against me. I would solve one issue to be met with another one, either the same issue or a worsening one. And it just stood there, watching me. I could feel its gaze burning into the side of me too. Now, before this call, it had been a relatively busy night. I was sharp as a tack, fully eaten, hydrated, slept great the day before, I was in a great mental condition, I had no serious worries on my mind, I was in an optimal state to be dealing with this scene, at least as much as any human could, I guess. I had seen far worse injuries and even more horrific things during my career, so I couldn't bring myself to think that this was a tipping point for me or anything. Some things that I have thought about and debunked was bad lighting maybe, but it was a well-lit street and I could see everything else clearly. I also have perfect vision and don't wear glasses or contacts or anything. Maybe an eye blur? But no, looking around the figure was fixed in position from one point to another, and if it was an eye blur, it would have followed as I looked around. Maybe my imagination. Doubtful. I mean, I'm a relatively boring person, to be honest. I rarely watch scary movies, play scary games, or anything that my mind could reference and build upon to trick my eyes like that. Stress? Oh, like I said, I've dealt with worse in my career, and it was the last night shift before I actually went on vacation, so to be honest, I was in a great mood. Extra injuries? Popping up in a clouded mind? Could be a coincidence, however, I'm super meticulous and I triage, check and check again and then keep checking. A patient's life depends on it, so keep looking and predict what could happen, like plan A, B, and then C, and then go back again. And I just cannot shake the feeling that it was fighting against me. Was it his time? And was I standing in the way of that? I don't know. Was it a Grim Reaper? An angel? If it is an angel, though, I will say that they need to change their outfits because it creeps me out and still does when I think about it. Since that call, though, I've attended thousands of other calls and I have never seen anything like it again. Although, since then, I will say that I haven't seen anything as bad as injury-wise as that, so maybe next time I'll say hi to it if I ever go through this again. Thankfully, no one actually died that night. Shocking, I know, considering the injuries would typically warrant a death certificate. And look, I'm proud of myself and my colleagues, but I am just haunted by whatever that figure was. My husband's family has a history of psychic mediums, witchcraft, etc., and although he and I are both skeptics, there has been unexplainable moments for sure. That being said, I do believe that there are unknown energies and things in this world, and this is feeling a bit like one of them. My husband and son, 4 years old, have never slept well. They both have night terrors, lucid dreams, sleepwalking and talking, which certainly isn't that unusual. Well, the other night, my husband turned on all the lights in our room around 2 a.m. When I angrily asked what the heck he was doing, he simply said that there was a man here. Then he went back to sleep. Shortly after, my son comes running into our bed crying. I did a quick house check and there was nothing, of course. We also have a dog who is very protective, so I'd be beyond shocked if any human could actually get remotely close to our house without her losing her mind. But my husband has no memory of freaking me out like this. The next night, my son is crying out, "No, go away," and runs into our bed. The same thing happens the next night, and when I ask him about it, he doesn't remember why he was so upset. The boys being weird and awake isn't new, but then something happened with my daughter, 2 years old, that has me a little bit spooked. So she started waking up crying no, no, and she's usually a wonderful sleeper. I went into her room to comfort her, and her room is really dark, but I reached down to pick her up as she ran towards me. But that's when I realized that it wasn't her. Instead, something brushed past me and out of the cracked open door. When I turned to see what ran past me, nothing was there though. I rocked my daughter back to sleep that night, told whatever energy lingered to go away, and we went on with our night. Well, life got busy and we were out of town for a few days, so a cleanse didn't happen as I was planning to do. We were home last night and my daughter woke up crying for me, and I laid down in bed with her and she calmed back to sleep. Then I had a terrible nightmare. I don't remember the specifics, but I woke up in a complete sweat. She was still asleep, but as I laid there, I swear to you that I felt pressure of something crawling down my body and off of my chest. It felt like the weight of maybe like a small doll running off of me. Panicked and freaked out, I sat up and I didn't see anything. I just laid down and visualized a warm light surrounding and protecting us to try and comfort myself. I eventually went back to sleep and my daughter woke up once or twice more needing quick comfort. I'm cleaning the house now in preparation for a sage cleanse in a simmer pot, something that I've been learning about and was suggested to me, and hopefully that'll take care of whatever this is. I work at a small bookstore in a quiet part of town. It closes at 9 p.m. and since I usually work closing shifts, I walk to my car in the empty parking lot alone. It's a safe area, or so I thought at least. because about a week into my new shift schedule, I started noticing a man across the street. He wasn't doing anything at first, just leaning on a lamppost looking toward the store. The first night, I brushed it off. The second night, though, he was there again. Same place, same posture. By the third night, I knew that it was no longer coincidence. He never approached, never said anything, and just watched me. I told my manager, but he said that unless the guy came onto store property, that there really wasn't much that he could do. So I started leaving through the back door instead, and for a few days it worked as he was gone, until he wasn't. And one night, I walked to my car and found a sticky note on the windshield. All it said was, "Why are you hiding?" No name, no number, just that one sentence. I decided that night that I wasn't going to run anymore. So the next evening I left work and I saw him again across the street. So I followed him. I didn't confront him, I just walked the same direction from a distance. He didn't look back once. He walked 3 blocks, turned into an alleyway near an old building, and just vanished. And I mean, he just completely disappeared. I ran to the corner, but nothing. No doors, no noise, no shadow. He was just gone, as if he had just vanished out of thin air. After that, I never did see him again. But sometimes when I leave work late, I still feel like I'm being watched. And because of that, I never park in the same place twice.